Recently I heard a story from a priest about a funeral that he was preparing. It was before the person who was the deceased had died. He went to go and visit with this elderly parishioner and some of the family, and they were starting to plan out what they wanted for the funeral, for the music, the readings, and a few other things. And they were talking about symbols to place on the coffin. And this elderly female parishioner said, "I want a fork placed on my coffin." The priest thought it was a little bit of an odd thing to have placed on your coffin. People sometimes have rosary beads or pictures of themselves, or sometimes a shark's scarf placed on the coffin, or other things. But she wanted a fork placed on the coffin. And he said to this elderly female parishioner, "Why do you want a fork placed on the coffin?" And she said, "Well, at my funeral, I want everybody to remember that the best is yet to come." And he said, "What do you mean by this?" He said, "Well, when I go to parish functions, when we get to eat, you get to the main meal and we've got the cutlery, and they collect up the plates and they tell you, keep your fork, because she knows dessert's on the way." She said, "I keep my fork, and I want people to remember that the best is yet to come. I'm going for a good meal, and I'm going to need my cutlery with me." I thought it was a good... When this priest was telling me, I thought, oh, well, that sort of makes sense. And it's very much true. The best is yet to come, and we should be enthusiastic about what's to come. Yes, we've had great experiences in life, sometimes challenging experiences as well, but we should be optimistic and positive about what's to come. We should have our fork maybe in our hand or maybe on the coffin. Maybe it's a strange thing, I think, to put on your coffin, but I think the whole story is an interesting story, and it relates to our readings today. The gospel today is about a wedding. Jesus gives us this parable. And in Jewish times, at the time of Jesus and a little bit earlier, what would happen is that the groom would come to the bride's family home to get permission to marry the bride. He would then go back to his family's home, and the groom would then start to prepare for the wedding. And the role of the bridesmaids was to prepare the bride, but was also to carry torches, to carry lamps in the procession from the bride's house to the groom's house when the groom eventually comes to say, "We're ready for the wedding, come." So the job of the bridesmaids was to carry these lamps. So there were 10 bridesmaids in this story, as we have, and 5 of them were all ready. They had their lamps and they had enough oil to accompany the journey. Now the journey might have been just within the one town. It could have been 100 metres. It might have very well been, perhaps like the gospel was giving us the indication today, it could have been a few kilometres walk. It might have been a few towns away, or maybe even further. And so you don't know how much oil you'd need to keep the lamp going so you could walk from one town to another and light the journey for the bride to be able to get safely from the bride's house to the groom's home for the wedding. So that was the main job of the bridesmaids, to light the way. It's quite interesting though, 5 bridesmaids, they knew what their gig was, what their job was. They needed their lamps and they needed oil. The other 5, who knows what they were doing. I'm sure they were worrying about the dress and the hair and all those other things, and they forgot that their main task was to light the journey in the procession from one home to the other. And so they said to the 5 bridesmaids who've got oil, "Let's have some of yours." And we have this interesting situation where the bridesmaids who have some oil have to make a very wise decision. Do they share what they've got and potentially give up what they're meant to be doing, or do they hold what they've got for themselves and commit to what they're meant to be doing? So it's a very interesting situation. Often you'd think what they should have done is they should have shared with the bridesmaids who didn't have enough oil. That would maybe be the obvious thing to do. But the challenge with sharing is if you share and you no longer have enough to be able to do what you're meant to do, you're going to be in a problem. Now back to the story of the lady who had the fork. She knew that she was going on a journey and she wanted to get there. She wanted to get to the banquet and she wanted to have her fork with her because the best was to come. All of us have a journey that we're on. We should bring people along with us. We should, if we've got excess, we should share with people. And that's a very important thing. But if in sharing it will jeopardise our ability to be able to get to the destination and to do what we're meant to do, then it's not really sharing. It's almost sort of sacrificing ourselves. Which makes me think about today. Today we begin NAIDOC Week, where we think of the Indigenous people here in this country, in this land. People came from overseas from Europe and other places to this land. And the Indigenous shared this land with many different people. Sometimes it was shared and sometimes it was forcibly taken. In sharing, it shouldn't destroy our ability to get to our destination. For the Indigenous, they have and always have been a people of their culture. And in sharing the land with us, we shouldn't destroy their culture. We shouldn't destroy their identity. We should preserve that. We should cherish that, promote that. Sometimes, though, sharing can almost be a manipulation to say, you need to give it to me. That's not sharing. So the gospel today is quite interesting. 10 bridesmaids, 5 have enough oil to do their task, to get the job done, to light the way for the bride, from the bride's residence to the groom's residence for the wedding. They knew what they had to do. If you've got excess, you can share. Otherwise, you need to do the tasks that have been given to you. The best is yet to come. Let's be excited about the future. Let us bring what we have. Let's use it to be able to get to the wedding feast, to the feast of heaven. Let's bring, if we've got excess, share with people if we can. If we don't have excess, make sure that we do the tasks we're meant to do. We're meant to get to heaven. We're meant to be there so we can participate in the banquet because the best is yet to come.